Okay, so everyone's coming in. It will take about 5 to 10 minutes for everyone to come in, but we can get started a little bit before that. Welcome, guys.
Okay, hi everyone. So we're gonna get started. If you're a Medical Wonders member, I just now put a Google Forms for you guys. We're gonna start keeping attendance like this, so there'll be a Google Forms that is usually sent out right before the panel starts, and you guys can just sign in and let us know which position you are, so then we can add that 1 or 1.5 hours of service depending on how long this lasts. Yeah, so hi everyone. We're super excited. This is, I believe, our third panel, and we are introducing AAPI because especially this month, we are focusing on AAPI and the recent stuff that has been going on across the world. And it's hosted by Medical Wonders. If you guys don't know, we are a nonprofit organization that's youth-led, and we have about 300 members across the world that are involved in making sure that the youth are educated and advised about the medical field, which includes the different professions, the different devices, and different careers that you can actually go into. So if you can go to the next slide, Mita. Okay, so before we kind of introduce ourselves, we just want to kind of shed light on what's been going on. So we're kicking off May, which is AAPI Heritage Month, with our AAPI in Medicine panel. So we'll be highlighting 5 amazing Asian American women in medicine in this event by having them answer different questions about their experiences and participating in various segments. So just to introduce myself, my name is Sonia Majmudar. I am a current senior in New Jersey, high school senior, and I founded this organization in March. And since then, we've kind of grown a lot. So I'm really excited. And the people that are going to introduce themselves after me have been working a lot towards this panel. And it's really important that they're also highlighted. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Tian, and I'm a member of the executive board, and I'm from California, and I'm a junior.
Hi, everybody. I'm Danielle. I'm a member of the executive board as well, and I work as a marketing director, and I'm a junior from California as well.
Hi guys, my name is Maida. I am the marketing director here at Medical Wonders, and I am a high schooler from Florida.
Hi everyone, my name is Ranur. I'm in grade 9 and I'm from British Columbia, Canada, and I'm a part of the panel team here at Medical Wonders.
Hi, I'm Skylar. I'm a member of the panel team at Medical Wonders, and I am a junior from California.
I think that's everybody. So here we go. Welcome, guys.
Okay, so how does this work? So basically, we're going to be recording this and posting it on YouTube. So basically, the panel will be recorded and we'll be posting on YouTube, and volunteers and members will get hours for being here. members cannot get hours. Obviously, if they're just watching it and stuff, you have to be actually present at the event. And if you aren't a member or a volunteer and would like to be part of our organization, be sure to email or DM us, and I will be putting the contact info in the chat because we have a lot of different opportunities that are open right now. So as I said before, just to reiterate, we're a student-led nonprofit dedicated to educating the youth on the field of medicine. We aspire to increase transparency on the field and providing a lot of hands-on approaches and opportunities to actually get involved with the medical field. We understand that it's been really hard with COVID and everything that's been going on, and we're pretty much based online. And we provide a lot of opportunities, and we have students that are part of us that are from various different countries and stuff like that. Okay, so our agenda, this is how it's going to work with the AAPI panel. So we usually have a similar agenda to our panels, but we're going to first introduce our panels, give them the opportunity to kind of talk about their background in medicine and how they got to where they are today. Then we're going to have an elaboration section where we're going to be asking them specific AAPI issues that have currently been going on and their kind of experiences on that and how it kind of relates to the medical field. And we're going to have a pre-question session, which our panel team and other people that kind of gave in questions in the Google Forms when they signed up, depending on which person that they wanted to send it to, they'll have that section to kind of answer that. Then we'll have an open-ended Q&A, which is kind of you guys just responding in the chat, anything that you guys want to know extra about these panelists, and then we're going to wrap it up. So. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to give it to the panelists and they can introduce themselves, but we're really excited and we can't wait.
Hi, everyone. My name is AG, and I am currently a second-year dental student at Temple University, and I went to undergrad at Villanova University, so I've been in Philly like my whole life. Thank you so much. Moving on.
Hi everyone, I'm Cynthia. I am starting anesthesia residency this July in New Jersey. I went to undergrad in Australia, so I'm from Australia, and I did medical school in England, and I worked as a doctor in England before moving out here to the US.
And next up we have.
Hi, I'm Harriet, and I'm a second-year pharmacy student at UOP. I did my undergrad at UOP too because I'm part of the 2+3 program where you can do 2 years of undergrad and then 3 years of your pharmacy school to get out with the PharmD degree. And I've basically been in California my entire life, and I grew up in the Bay Area.
Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, I'm Helen. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and I'm currently a graduating medical student from Johns Hopkins. I am starting residency in Boston in June at Harvard for plastic surgery.
Hi everyone, my name is Lulu. I am currently a sleep medicine fellow at Michigan. Originally, I was born in China, moved to Canada, grew up there when I was like 4 to like 11. And then we moved to Michigan, and that's where I did the rest of my schooling, and then went to medical school at Michigan State, did a 7-year medical program, went out to Minnesota to train, and now I'm back.
Okay, so moving on to our next segment, elaboration, and we're just going to be answering panel questions about AAPI. So in light of AAPI month, we believe it's important to raise awareness for the common stereotypes among Asian Americans, especially in the medical field, and especially with the rise in racially motivated hate crimes. We just want to raise awareness of how we can combat that. So with that being said, our first question is, a common stereotype in the medical field is that it is overruled by Asians. What do you think is the root of this stereotype and how can we combat that? And our second question is, racially motivated hate crimes have become very prevalent amidst the global pandemic, especially when it comes to the AAPI community and COVID-19. What do you think is the root of this problem and how can we work together to combat it? And the last question is, the model minority is a stereotype that entails that those belonging to the AAPI community are inherently smart, wealthy, and hardworking. Has this played any role in your choice of career? How do you feel about this stereotype? So now we're going to hear some insight and experiences from our wonderful panelists.
Hi, so to answer the first question, I think that Asian stereotypes play a big role in this idea that Asians dominate the healthcare field. Because I know when I was growing up, a lot of times people in my class would say, well, like you're supposed to be good at science or like you're supposed to be good at math. And then that kind of like makes it seem like we're all supposed to go into healthcare, and even like our parents would be like, being a doctor is so honorable, like you should do it. And I think a way to really combat it is to represent Asians in all fields, because I know like a lot of my Asian friends, they're really good at art, but that's not really represented. And I think like for growing youth too, if you see like a bunch of different people doing a bunch of different things, it'll make you think or like give you hope to do it too. And then number two, so I know this AAPI hate has been going on a lot since COVID and it's only getting worse. And I think it's really because of this idea of COVID. I know in the beginning, like news was portraying it as if it was something that was because of like East Asia, like it came from East Asia. And then I know a lot of people said like, oh, like Asian people shouldn't come here because they're just going to spread it or things like that. And I think that just really worsened this AAPI hate that's already been existing because of like prejudice and like hate in general. And then number three is I've always been affected by like Asian stereotypes. I know like when I was in high school, I kind of felt like I was not really highlighted the way that other people were, like my non-Asian friends. Like if I got a good grade in something, it's because I'm supposed to, or that's expected of me. And that kind of affects you at a young age because it kind of shuts you down. It's not like your accomplishment anymore. It's just like what's expected of you. And in the beginning, it affected me a lot. I know like when I was younger, like in my teens, it hurt me because I was like, I studied so hard for this and I'm not naturally good at math. I'm actually like really bad at math. So when people and teachers expect something of you, it hurt my confidence. But then I think around like junior year and senior year of high school, I just stopped caring and I just said, you know what, I can't make anyone happy. Like there's always going to be somebody who says something to me. So I just decided to do what I want. And it just so happened to be the healthcare realm. So thank you.
Thank you. So moving on, we have Cynthia.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So first of all, the question about whether healthcare is overruled by Asians. I just want to say that it does seem like it's overruled because I personally know a lot of Asians that are in a medical profession, and I feel like that's a common stereotype. But when I actually looked at the stats on the AAMC website, it's only 17% of Asian people who are in the medical profession. So it's actually not a huge majority. But I think like AG was saying as well, you know, there's a lot of stereotypes that's been put on Asians, and it's a huge part of it is the whole model minority stereotype. And that stereotype put on Asians, as well as Asians perpetuating that belief, you know, growing up thinking that that's what you have to do because you believe in that, and the stereotypes put on you, it all kind of clumps up and bubbles up to become this belief that that's what you have to go into. But I think it's really important to acknowledge Asians that are outside of healthcare, because I personally know a lot of Asians who are very successful in a lot of other professions. I have a few friends who are well-known chefs in Australia, for example, friends who are artists. Yeah, just in a lot of different fields that are not healthcare. And it's hard to, I think it's hard for them to find recognition in that, because they grew up with this stereotype thinking that they had to go into healthcare. But I think acknowledging that and giving them, you know, giving them like the encouragement to go into what they really do enjoy doing that is not healthcare is probably really, really important. And I want to say that to you guys who are in school. If you don't think that health profession is what you want to do, you have time to explore. You have time to try other things before really deciding that that's what you want to do for the rest of your life. So that's the first question. The second question was about the growing AAPI hate and how that is related to COVID currently. So I think one of the biggest thing when I was asked this question, I think it's about the fear of the unknown and feeling the need to blame someone, because for all of us as humans, when something terrible is happening, we kind of want to just find a cause of it. We want to figure out what's going on, and we want to go to the root of it. And I think a lot of people felt the root of it was Asian people, because coronavirus had started coming out in China. And as a result of that, you know, people were starting to associate Asian people or Chinese or East Asian people with the virus. And the media was portraying it to be this thing that could be created from a Chinese lab, could not be created from a Chinese lab. So I think just the fear of it and just the fear of it and the media portrayal of it being from the specific city in China made everyone grow in fear and grow in the need to blame someone. And I think that's a huge part of why there's been a lot of Asian hate since COVID has started. And yeah, so I think to combat it, it would be important to speak up about it, to increase awareness that the virus wasn't the fault of an Asian person. It's not the fault of us as Asian people collectively. And also speaking up about the hate crimes, because like AG said as well, it's been something that's been going on for quite a long time. You know, all of us, I would assume, have been through racism and racist remarks. I personally have. I've only moved to the US for over a year, and I've had 3 or 4 racist remarks thrown at me. But just being willing to speak up about it and telling people, you know, we need to work together. We need to acknowledge that this is a thing and that COVID has made it worse, but it's something that has been going on for a while. And the last question, the model minority stereotype. So I think this stereotype is a really unnecessary label that has been put on Asian, and it just perpetuates this belief, and it demands a lot on us as Asian people from a young age. It puts a lot of pressure on the younger Asian generation to have to do well, be better, put pressures on themselves, and that eventually leads to a lot of mental health difficulties and, you know, leads to anxieties and depression. Personally, I have experienced it. I'm sure most of us here have experienced it. You know, growing up, I was expected to do well in sciences and math, like AG was saying. And I remember failing a math exam and crying so badly because I was like, this shouldn't happen to me. I shouldn't be failing math exams, but I did. And this stereotype I have seen put on a lot of my friends who go into medicine or engineering or law, for example, just because they felt like they needed to and not because they actually wanted to. But it personally wasn't the reason I chose to go into medicine. I had no interest in medicine until I was in my second year of my undergrad degree. So I originally thought I want to do something in science, but not specifically medicine. But I eventually had chose to go down that path as well. But yeah, so I just want to say that this stereotype should be spoken about. It should be realized that it's putting a lot of unnecessary pressures on youth and that it's causing mental health problems, and it really just shouldn't be a thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Cynthia. Now we're going to hear from Harriet.
Oh, did you want to change the slide?
Can you see it now?
Yeah. So the first question is about the common stereotype in the medical field that is overruled by Asians. And I think that the root cause can come from demographic and confirmation bias. And like Cynthia said, possibly from the model minority myth as well. Most of the time when the thought is already in your head, in this case, that the medical field is overruled by Asians, every single time that someone sees that there's an Asian in a healthcare setting, their minds can interpret this evidence as confirmation of their belief. And so they're using data that's available in front of them to make fast decisions, to recall information selectively. And our brains like to use shortcuts. It's called type 1 thinking, and this thinking can cause bias, which probably accounts for the stereotype. And so I think to combat this, we can, like train ourselves to do type 2 thinking, which requires us to be more careful and be more reflective while making decisions. And, like educate others on how to become less biased and how to not fall victim into that by consciously adjusting your response. So like rather than thinking that, oh, that's another Asian healthcare provider again, you can say, oh, that's another healthcare provider who just happens to be Asian. So that's the first question. For the second question was about the racially motivated hate crimes. So this is nothing new. I think that this issue really comes from the us versus them mentality. And this is one mentality that leads to animosity, and it causes you to lose realization that we're all just the same, we're all humans. And because when you start to classify people into like categories and you start to distinguish them using this us versus them mentality, it's actually one of the leading steps to genocide. And at its roots are ignorance and fear. And so when you put these two factors into play, this is where it comes from. And this mentality is throwing the AAPI community to become scapegoats because of media portrayal. And with the pandemic going on, I think that it's only caused increase in frustration and anger and increase that feeling of the us versus them. So something that we can do to break this barrier to address this is to be vocal about the inequalities, like what AG and Cynthia said. Like reach out to resources, listen to the reactions around you, and speak up for these issues so that we can all learn from one another. As for the last question regarding the model minority, I actually didn't hear about this term until recently. I grew up in an area that was predominantly Asian. I can definitely understand that this stereotypes creates tension, and it pushes forward the narrative of like being too good or not good enough. And I think that it's a term that pushes forward that there are good minorities and problem minorities as well. And so it invalidates diverse experiences and dismisses our equally diverse struggles. And so I think that the problem about the model minority myth is that it puts a wedge between the minority communities, and it implies that struggling socioeconomically is a choice, which isn't true at all. For many, working hard won't guarantee success, and the implications of this is really severe. So it puts down marginalized groups, and at the same time, it shames Asian Americans who don't live up to the ideal. And this minority myth can also make people invisible because it seems like success is expected out of us. And so it takes away that individualism because it groups us together. Yeah.
Thank you, Harriet. Now we're going to hear from Helen.
Hi, everyone. So I had a lot of similar approaches to Harriet, so it's good to see that we are on the same page with a lot of this. And Harriet, you explained it so well, so let's just jump in if I'm explaining anything wrong. For the first question, I do think it is an availability heuristic, so it is a mental shortcut that people are making, and what they choose to believe and ingrain and create that stereotype is how they perceive the world, right? So the way I see patients and my coworkers, my other people, is that each of us live in our own bubble of reality. And once in a while, we get lucky enough where we can become part of their bubble of reality. And so every time we meet a patient, we are able to create essentially like an intersection with that bubble, right? Like a Venn diagram. So a lot of the stereotypes arise because the bubbles are not grounded in reality. And so I see every time I meet a patient who has these misconceptions, I take that as an opportunity to re-educate them and actually kind of like dive into their bubble and turn it around and then leave. So for the second question, very similar. I do think it's a phenomenon groupthink. So groupthink is a fallacy where a lot of people in a big group tend to give up their own ability to form conclusions by adopting other people's, right? And so a lot of times with groupthinks, one of the fallacies that have come out is scapegoat populations. So you're essentially using a subpopulation within that group and dehumanizing them and throwing a lot of your insecurities and fears to them. But something I've been thinking a lot about recently is what if AAPI hate has always existed within these people, but the culture has changed to allow them to express it more commonly? What if people walking down the street that yell rude things to you have always thought it, but now finally feel comfortable doing it because they think that society isn't going to stop them, that is now acceptable? And so beyond just the group think and scapegoating, it's about creating a community that frowns upon it again, and it's not okay. And bystanders will stop and essentially address this issue. So for the third one, how I've been affected, I do have a pretty unconventional background, but the stereotypes that have affected me is essentially like if I do succeed, it's because I'm Asian, and if I don't, and if I fail, it's because I'm an Asian woman, or so what it does is that it really depersonalizes you and makes you feel like you have to work really, really hard just to meet society's expectations, which results in a lot of loss in self-identity. So one thing I really wish I had done in high school was to focus more on who I am and what I enjoy doing before I go out into the world, into college, into medical school, and taking advantage of those opportunities because I already know who I am, rather than letting those opportunities define who I am.
Thank you, Helen. So now we are going to hear from Dr. Lulu.
Hi. So my throat kind of hurts, so I might be a bit raspy today. But I think everyone brought some really great ideas, and I don't want to sound repetitive with some of the things I say. So to answer the first question with the stereotype, I think to add on to that, sometimes I don't think it's a bad thing that, society views maybe Asian people, are in the medical field, but I think it's not bad as long as we are equally represented in other fields as well. I think the expectation that society places on you does mold you sometimes, and it does place a lot of pressure. And I think what is damaging to that stereotype is that it just means that we work hard, we study, yet despite playing key roles in society, like being in the medical field, like being in the law field, like being art fields, we kind of have to follow what other people expect and want of us. And, we are our own individual person. And I think that's when these stereotypes become really damaging. To answer the second question, to why maybe there has been so much AAPI hate, I think, there's a lot of layers to it. And personally, I've been trying to unpack this myself. I grew up, I was born in China, moved to Canada when I was about 3 or 4. And I grew up in Toronto, which was very diverse, and it was a lot of immigrants as well. Then we moved to a suburb in Michigan that was also very diverse. I made a lot of friends that were, from different backgrounds. College was, I worked pretty hard in college, and, as I'm embarrassed to say, I just wasn't aware of a lot of, if there was racism around me, or if there was inequality in terms of, towards the AAPI community, even though I was in several Asian communities. It was not until med school that I think it really hit me. And that was that, and I'll talk about this later, but I went to a med school that was, very white, and the area was very white. So, a lot of these issues I wasn't very aware of. And I think part of the good thing that can come from a lot of this is people addressing a lot of these issues and thinking through a lot of these issues, because I don't think they're new. I think anti-Asian propaganda, policies, and rhetoric have been around for centuries. But it's only with this unrest that I think that, we're suddenly scapegoats to society. There's a lot of chaos, unhappiness, there's dying, and people want to point fingers when they just feel very not stable. And I also think that, politically, vilifying probably China is not helping, and I think it comes from both sides. And I think politically right now, it's a huge mess. And I do think it's probably going to get worse in the next few years. Education wise, I think the American system is not set up for us to recognize other cultures or other people's stories, which, a big part of the population in the US are immigrants. But, growing up, I remember learning about American history, even like world history was very limited in their views until you start going to, college, or you start reading on your own. And I do encourage people, when they read the news, to read news from other countries as well, not just, CNN, New York Times. If you read Fox News, or, I encourage people to branch out, read, different countries' news, because they will report things in a completely different angle. But kind of going back to what I said, I don't think these struggles are new. And I think, I agree with a lot of the panelists. I think it's just with political, social unrest, a lot of this is unraveling, and people are more comfortable, and they feel like they almost have a right to, be angry with the AAPI community. And I think what's most important to overcome a lot of these struggles for Asian Americans is, we can start being vocal about these injustices, which I do thankfully see a lot of the new generation doing more. I don't know about, your background, but I know that my background, and probably a lot of Asian Americans, my parents are first generation immigrants, and they came here to work hard, and they're not very vocal people. They're, we need to just make this work. We need to work hard. Don't cause a lot of ruckus. Just get by. This is not this is not a problem we should be addressing, but it is, and it's important that we see that. I know I'm talking to a lot of people who are in high school, and you guys are the next generation. So, saying something when there is injustice, educating people around you if you feel like there is bias. These are all, step-by-step things. And I think the education system also needs to be reformed. And I think that, Americans need to be taught truly world history, not just American history, which is 300 years. And yeah, so I think, I think as people of color, we also need to, there's been a lot of racial reckoning, I would say, this past year. And I think it's important that we as people of color all come together and not try to pit each other against, one race against another. Because when we do that, it's not going to be a happy ending. And I think we also need to recognize that. And then lastly, the stereotype that is discussed, I also kind of went through an unconventional route. I decided on medicine in high school. And I did a 7-year medical program. I was 16 or 17 when I decided. And, thinking back, I was so young, and just, and you just, a lot of times, some things you may think that you want to do at 16, 15, even 17, or, even in your late 20s, you may not want to do later on in life. And I do know a lot of my classmates who went through this 7-year med program, a lot of them did quit, or a lot of them just, they weren't into it. And they ended up with loans in medical school that after they quit. And that's never, a good situation to be in. So I think that part of this, and a big part of my classmates, they were Asian Americans. And I do think that's the stereotype did play a role in that. You all hear like, oh, you are Asian, you're supposed to be good at math. Sure, I was to a certain degree, but it's almost like it was self-perpetuating, where I felt like I needed to be good at what society expected of me by putting in the time and work. And this idea is incredibly damaging. I feel like a lot of good talent sometimes is covered up or lost because in the Asian community, because they just are not given this opportunity to explore, because these are things that you are expected of. And as a race, or as the, overall, I think it's extremely damaging to the AAPI community, because they view us as a group, an entity, not as individuals with our each individual talents that we could use to contribute to society. It's just, so I think it was incredibly damaging to, Asian American psyche to grow up in those expectations. And it almost dehumanizes us. So I think it's important that we also address that moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lulu. Thank you to all the panelists who shared their experiences. It was truly like good insight, and I definitely learned a lot, and I hope all the viewers did too.
So next up, we have pre-questions, but a little bit before that, if Helen wants to come on.
Hi.
If you want to just give your like final remarks, because I know you got called like on call and stuff. If you want to give your final remarks, and we can always ask you the questions over Instagram Live. So if you want to say anything or reiterate anything, but yeah.
All right. So one of the questions I got is, what is the most rewarding part about being an API woman? I think what's most rewarding that I found, especially in this last year, is that you bring a totally different perspective to everything. And you've lived a totally different life. So no matter which patient that you're seeing, or no matter what research team you're walking into, you can always relate to someone. And I think building that rapport with patients is really, really rewarding, but also very important for the patient, and to provide them with really good care. And so that's been the best part. Um, so a story about that actually was when I was on my pediatric rotation at Johns Hopkins, there's a lot of really underrepresented minorities that come through, including Gypsy families. And I was shocked at how uncomfortable a lot of the providers on the team were to take care of the Gypsy families, just because they were not understanding of their culture. They didn't really understand their values. But for me, growing up with a Chinese heritage and being exposed to a lot of the Chinese minority groups, it really helped me understand how people, just because they have different beliefs, doesn't make them less human or less intelligent. And so I actually felt pretty comfortable communicating with the Gypsy families. And then very quickly, how was 3D printing, how has 3D printing advanced medicine? So I'm really interested in the intersection of innovation within surgery. So I co-founded a 3D printing lab at Johns Hopkins. And one great thing about 3D printing is that the workflow is a lot simpler and cost effective compared to traditional manufacturing. And so you can actually create patient-specific devices, which is really helpful for modeling their anatomy or for making surgical guides, or you can really, really quickly make surgical devices, which is what I do. So you are able to, think of an idea when you're in the operating room, go to the 3D printing lab, design it, print it, test it, and then even the very next day, redesign it, and then go back and test it, redesign it, and test it. And it takes this decade-long process, and it shortens it to just days or months. So I think it's very, very exciting. And there really isn't a difference between plastic and reconstructive surgery. It is one entire field. Plastics, it just means extremely malleable. And so the reason why I love plastic surgery is because we combine form and function to improve patient outcomes, and reduce morbidity and mortality. So what I mean by form and function is that not only is it anatomically, structurally sound, but it still functions very well. And it doesn't matter if it's cosmetic or reconstructive, if it provides the patient a better quality of life, and sometimes it even saves their life, then that's the best feeling ever, and that's why I chose to go into plastic surgery.
And then what was your process of match day? Do you have any experience?
I totally skipped over that one because I was still a little traumatized from the entire process. Um, so match day in the States is when medical students that are graduating apply into their specialties. And there's only so many spots for every specialty. And so you go through the entire interview process. And at the very end, you submit your match list. So it's a list of your schools that you want to go to the most. And then the schools will submit their matchees list. So people that they think would be a really, really good fit. And then there's this like crazy computer algorithm that won Nobel Prize that matches each student to the right school. And going through it was really, really nerve-wracking, especially in plastic surgery, because it was such a competitive field. I heard crazy numbers of like 400 or 500 applicants this year for 180 spots. And so you just never know what's going to happen. And it just feels like you're working so hard for the last 27, 28 years for this 1 minute where you open an email that tells you where you have to go for the next 6 or 7 years. But in hindsight, it all works out. I think, the system was designed to help you find your favorite fit. And, a lot of people who are not happy with where they matched for residency, they go there and they realize, wow, like, I didn't think this was the best fit for me, but everyone else thought it was the best fit for me. So I can really see myself being happy here. And a lot of them do end up being very happy.
Thank you so much, Helen. I know you have to go, We really appreciate having you here today. It was really nice.
No, thank you, everyone. I think what you guys are doing are incredible, and happy to participate in the community and answer any questions offline too.
But
Bye.
You guys are awesome.
really appreciate it. We'll definitely see if we can have you on Instagram Live, so everyone check
Of
out
course, yeah.
that.
Thank you guys, and thank you to the panelists too.
Bye, Ellen. Thank you so much. Okay, so next up we have AG. If you want to go ahead and we can get your questions. So, what made you decide to start your YouTube channel and in which you show your journey of your dental school? So what kind of inspired you to start YouTube and share a little more about that?
Yeah, so when I was in high school and like college, I really wanted to understand what all these health professions were like. I know we have shadowing and all that, but I just wanted to see like what it really is like. I mean, like you can go follow a doctor around, you can follow a pharmacist around or a dentist around, but they're already doing their job. And I feel like the schooling process is very different and it can be hard, it can be like emotional. And I wanted to see like what someone is going through during that time, like, just like the reality of it. And, YouTube is pretty, I guess, real. Like nobody really filters it too much. So I know like during my youth, well, I'm still youthful, but when I was in like high school and college, I really tried to go on YouTube to see like a day in the life of a dentist or like a day in the life of a dental student or even med student. And at that time, it was like maybe 7 years ago, 5 years ago, and there wasn't a lot there for me. It was like I had to scroll through so many search engines just to find like maybe one channel. And I mean, it was really helpful. So I kind of started it for myself and for other people. Like, one, I just want to hold on to my memories. I know like sometimes like a week goes by and I just don't remember anything because it was just so crazy. But if I have like proof of what I did and like memories, I can always look back on them. And then also like now like your generation who might be considering dentistry or who might be considering something can have like the resource to see what it's really like, because you might think it's something, like you might imagine dental schools like this, but when you really go there, it's so much different. And that's kind of why I started it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I know it's definitely really cool to like when you're looking at different career paths and looking into that, it's really cool to see what an unfiltered day-to-day life is like. So it really does help. So thank you for that. And then moving on, if you want to talk a little bit about how you balance your life, because you do so much and you're really active in so many things, and how you kind of balance your work, school with your personal life and how you have fun.
So balance is something that I am constantly working on. I know like in high school and college, I would always do so much, and that hasn't really changed. I'm still doing so much. I'm the VP of my class, and I just got elected to be pre-dental co-chair of ASDA, which is an American Student Dental Association. And I'm passionate about, caring for my classmates and wanting to help pre-dental students. So to me, it's not really like a job that I'm taking on or it's like too much work, but something that really helps me is to just really plan out my day and be really mindful of how much time I have during the time, like during the day. So I have this whiteboard on my wall and I would list out from Monday to Sunday exactly what my goals are for the week and the day. And that way, it's less intimidating, because I feel like if I have to wake up every morning and think about what exactly I have to do, that's just like a waste of my time. So I just spend one day like listing out my week, and it's like already there for me. And usually it works out. I mean, it's not perfect, but that way I can set aside like a certain amount of time for studying, a certain amount of time for, my roles in different organizations. And then I always have at least one day a week where I don't do anything. So I would like go out with my friends, go to like a restaurant, if it's open. I know during COVID, it was really hard to find personal time because I like going out to eat. And when everything was closed, that was a challenge. But, you find ways, you like hang out with friends, maybe like at your house, like in a safe way. And yeah, I just set aside like the amount of time I want to do something for myself or for like my organization or for school. And that's kind of how I learned to balance. And it's been working for the most part.
Yeah. I know you just kind of talked about your kind of how you plan your week. If you kind of want to get into your daily routine, kind of like a breakdown, how you like to go about that.
Yeah, so my daily routine changes, especially with COVID, so much has changed. I know in the fall, my schedule looked very different from what it looked in the spring and then now in the summer. So I guess I'll just explain like my summer schedule. Right now, we are completely online. So we have class from 8 a.m. until noon. And then from noon till 1, we have lunch. And then we're back in class from 4, or not 4, noon to 4. So it's a whole day from 8 to 4 of classes. And then afterwards, I'm probably going to eat dinner and study. That's kind of how it's been going for summer. But before summer, we usually had in-person labs. So I'm a dental student, and a lot of our education is based off of learning the techniques that you need to be a dentist. So we have to do that in person. And we would have labs in the mornings where we explored different techniques like how to fill a cavity, how to make a prep for a cavity prep, things like that. And yeah, it's a lot because you're in class most of the day, whether I'm in lab or whether I'm doing like lectures. And then afterwards, I really have to plan out my time. Like, okay, I'll have dinner for an hour. And then after that, I'll study for this amount of time. And that's kind of how it goes. I'm sorry I couldn't give like a very like standardized daily routine because I feel like every day and every like month is changing so much.
And then kind of moving into dentistry, have you always wanted to do dentistry and that's always been like, this is what I want to do, or did you move around? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I know we just talked about like the Asian stereotype, but I know my mom really wanted me to be in healthcare. And I respected that, like my parents want the best for me, and I understood that. So I did consider it. So I know I considered pharmacy, I considered general medicine, and then I didn't really know much about dentistry. But then I had the opportunity to shadow my dentist. And something that stood out to me was that dentistry has a lot of artistic work in it. And I know that I really enjoyed crafts. Like I loved playing with clay. I loved origami. Like I would spend my time making those little paper cranes because I really wanted to get to like 1,000. And then I know I enjoyed drawing. So in dentistry, you do all of that, but it's practical. And I just really like that I could do something with my hands, sculpt like a tooth, and then the patient can have that and it could change their life essentially because teeth are so important for like your confidence and function too, because without teeth, you might lose a lot of weight or it's just difficult. You can't enjoy good food. And I like that dentistry kind of like molded everything that I liked. So caring for patients, doing artistic work, and being in a like healthcare all into one little sweetly packaged career for me. So then in college, I explored it a little bit more. And I ultimately decided after a gap year that I really wanted to do it because I didn't want to be someone who, went through a very straight path and then get to dental school and then realize I don't want to do this, because some of my classmates do drop out because they realize they don't want to. So I took a gap year and then I finally kind of solidified my decision.
I really like the concept of gap year. Sounds really smart and interesting. And then kind of getting to what our panel is about today. Have you ever personally experienced racial sensitivity in your field?
Yeah, so during my gap year, I actually was working as a scribe. I know some of you might look into it when you do a gap year, but it's a great opportunity to get exposure to healthcare. And I did it because dentistry is evolving and it's going a lot into a hospital setting. So I wanted to see what that's like. And I was working with a pediatric pulmonologist, and our dress code was business professional. So I would go in wearing professional clothes. And I don't know if it's because of me being Asian, but a lot of times when someone didn't know me, they would kind of address me like doctor, or they would a nurse would come in with paperwork and they would be like, oh, are you Dr. So-and-so? And I don't know if that's necessarily racial sensitivity in the field, but I definitely think it might play on to this Asian stereotype and this idea of all Asians are doctors. So they see me and I'm Asian, so I must be a doctor. And to me, I felt uncomfortable because I'm not a doctor. And yeah, it's weird to experience it.
Yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah. But as a student, I haven't really experienced it, but also Temple is very diverse. So I don't know if that plays a role too.
Well, thank you, AG, for joining us today. And thank you for answering all the questions so well. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to Cynthia. Cynthia.
Hi.
So we can just start by, if you want to explain anesthesiology.
Sure. Okay, so I am starting residency in anesthesiology. Anesthesiology is a specialty where I guess you kind of numb people or take away the pain. And it's what most people who undergo surgery would require to, put them to sleep, to prevent them from having pain, and to make the procedure easier or better for them. And when they come out of it, they may not feel as much pain as they would have without anesthesia. So that's what I'm going into. But there is a lot of other things that come under anesthesiology. Critical care is a huge part of anesthesiology. So, any patients or any one of you who knows anyone who's been through ICU, anesthesia plays a part in that. A huge new thing from anesthesia over the last decade would be pain clinics and chronic pain clinics, where a lot of patients who have a lot of pain from long-term conditions, anesthesiologists are the ones that help them with prescribing pain relief or giving them certain kind of injections that help with their pain as well. I think that's a bit of a summary of what anesthesiology is.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then kind of going into, you're in your residency, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you just
I'm starting residency.
You're starting residency. So match day happened recently.
Yes.
And if you just want to kind of talk about that.
So I guess Helen kind of touched a lot about what match day would be like and what match day is. And for me, coming here as an international medical graduate, it's a very different process for me. So I think with most US med students, you go through med school and you kind of when you finish, you apply for a specialty. and majority of them would end up matching. Whereas as an international medical graduate, only about 50% of us do end up matching and 50% of us don't match. So the fact that I matched was a very exciting time, but also I was just very, very grateful to have matched because the chances of me matching was half. And the challenges that I face while transitioning after match, I think for me, a lot of my friends that were also applying as international doctors didn't match. So that was a bit of a struggle for me because, you know, we were all in it together. We were all people that were kind of like the outsiders applying. And as great as it was that I matched, it was very bittersweet that my friends didn't. And I don't know if anyone on here that is that's not a US student and is thinking about medicine down the line. Applying for medicine in the US as an international graduate is a lot more difficult and takes a lot more steps and is incredibly stressful.
Thank you for that. I think it's nice to have that international perspective of match day and all that. And then going into kind of the balance question, what do you do to cope with stress and like your hobbies, and how do you offset that with starting residency and just being in such a rigorous career path?
So like you said, there's no doubt that being in the medical field is incredibly stressful. I think, yeah, it's really important to have hobbies and things that you enjoy doing. So for me, a huge hobby of mine is cooking. I love to cook. I love to cook for myself. I love to cook for others. And I enjoy sharing my food with people, and that brings me a lot of joy. So I think being able to do that gives me not only a hobby, but also socialization and connection with other people. And also, another hobby of mine is doing yoga. I am currently in my process of becoming a yoga teacher as well. And that is, I guess, also a hobby, but also an exercise. So it kind of just gets a bit of everything together and kind of grounds me. But it is really, really stressful to be in medicine or dentistry or pharmacy or just any healthcare professional field, and also being an Asian because of all the stresses we have and put on ourselves. But I think it's really important to acknowledge the stress and talk about it. And that's something that I've become very, very open in doing recently, just talking about mental health a lot more openly, sharing with my family about it, and just talking to my parents about it. They're from a different generation where mental health wasn't spoken about at all, but now just talking to them about it, increasing their awareness about it, and as a result, increasing awareness of people around us about it. I think that just helps because it creates a great support system from your family and friends, and your support system is really important for you as you go through medical school and all other schools similarly.
I agree. And if you want to kind of dig a little bit more into your gap year that you took and the benefits, and if you would recommend it.
So I took a gap, it would be nearly 2 gap years once I start residency between, so it was actually between working as a doctor in England and starting residency here. So I took a gap year because I didn't actually want to take a gap year. I had problems with getting my visa to come to the US, so I needed to take time off, which ended up becoming 2 gap years for me. But that was really beneficial because I got to do quite a lot of things in that time. I got to do a master's in public health, which is something I've always wanted to do, and public health is something I enjoyed, so I got to fit that in during the time. And I did some volunteering. Before COVID, got to travel back home to Australia and did a bit of traveling in Asia. But gap years are great in the sense that if you are looking at ways to build your CV, you could do things that could build that, but you could also take a break. Like going to medicine or any healthcare profession is very stressful and tiring. And if you have the opportunity to take some time off, just to relax. So I guess, like they say, find yourself, do a bit of traveling if that's something that you enjoy, or just kind of take time away from what you're going to spend the rest of your life doing. So for me, doing that was really helpful. I mean, it was also a difficult time because COVID happened. I had just moved to the US. It was incredibly isolating. But I got to do the things that I've always wanted to do as well. And that helped me in terms of my application for residency, because I got to, I guess, work on my CV and build my CV, but also take time off before I go back into like full force of training.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then transitioning into a little bit of what our panel is about, and I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, but have you ever personally experienced racial sensitivity in your field?
So I've definitely experienced, remarks made towards me as being an Asian person in my field of work, as well as just being out on the streets. So when I was a doctor in the UK, I was working on a medical ward where a patient kind of just said that she didn't want me to be a doctor because I was Asian, and she wanted me to get someone else that wasn't Asian. And yeah, again, it's back to kind of just increasing awareness that it doesn't matter if we're Asian or not Asian. My role as a doctor is to be here to look after you. Well, unfortunately, she was racist towards me and a nurse who was also Asian. So we needed to get someone else to come and care for her. But I think just, increasing the awareness that it doesn't matter like what color you are. If you're a doctor or if you're a pharmacist or if you're a dentist, and if you're there to provide care for this person, that's what you're there to do.
Thank you. It was really insightful, your answers, and a little bit about what you talked about. So thank you for that, Cynthia. And now moving on to Harriet. If you want to just talk a little bit about what a pharmacist does, pharmacy in general, just explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so as pharmacists, we verify safe and effective use of medications. We're qualified to dispense prescription medications and give over-the-counter remedies for minor issues. We work with patients and prescribers to clarify alerts that are in the system. And a lot of technical work is done by the computers, and they alert us of the interactions and unusual dosing. But these alerts usually aren't straightforward. So we want to treat the patient and not the disease. And so many of these alerts can actually be ignored because they're either not relevant or the benefits outweigh the risks. And so some of the things that should have an alert may also not show up. So it's also our job to catch that, because we're your last line of defense before a medication error might reach you. We're also trained to recognize like general conditions that can be treated and we can also encourage you to be evaluated in the clinic as well if you show up at our pharmacy. And we'll also explain like how to use your medications and how to get the best benefit beyond what's written on the label and like the little packet that you get once you receive your medication. And in the field of pharmacy, there's actually a lot of different segments that I feel like people don't know about. So I feel like most people know more about the retail setting that you see like at CVS, Walgreens, but there's also other fields like industry where these pharmacists work with clinical drug trials and efficacy. There's also like ambulatory care where these pharmacists help in management of patients who are at higher risk of drug-related problems and disease complications because of lack of control. And they actually see the patients pretty regularly with partnership with a doctor. And there's also like hospital pharmacy and industry pharmacy as well. There's a lot more. If you want to know more about it, you can always contact me and I'd be happy to share with you. And we also immunize. So like the flu vaccine, pneumonia, shingles, hepatitis, and more recently, like the COVID vaccine. We can provide those to kids as well and make sure that you're on schedule. And I think that's something that some people may not know is that we can also prescribe birth control. And depending on the institution, we can adjust medication regimens alongside the doctor.
Thank you for that. I know you talked a little bit about the COVID vaccine, and I just want to kind of talk about that. Why do you think people are so hesitant to get the vaccine, and how do you think we can work to combat that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's always been a number of anti-vaxxers out there. And I think some of the hesitancy comes from misinformation. You know, the internet has a lot of false information out there. And if you're not careful of what you're reading, then you can fall into the wrong rabbit hole. And social media doesn't really help with that either. You know, like one piece of information may not seem like, one piece of wrong information may not seem like much, but you can start building this really large brick wall that can block you from reality. And so others I know may be hesitant because of mistrust or fear surrounding what seems like a novel vaccine. But you know, you can reach out to reputable sources, you know, talk to your doctor. There's been a lot of research behind mRNA vaccines. And so there's evidence behind it. So trust the science. But yeah, I think reaching out to your healthcare providers, we'd definitely be willing to talk to you regarding the benefits of getting that vaccine. And if you don't have a PCP or a doctor, you can reach out to your pharmacist as well. You know, we're one of the most accessible healthcare providers out there, and we'd definitely be willing to, you know, like talk to you about that.
Thank you for that. I think that's really important, especially in the time that we're going through right now. If you want to kind of get into how your heritage and your family have impacted and kind of changed your medical journey and how it is growing up Asian American in the Bay Area.
So my family, I actually don't have anyone in the family who's from the medical field. My mom was an art major and my dad is an engineer. So they've always been supportive of me. And growing up, you know, they always taught me the importance of like being independent and being able to rely on yourself and being willing to ask questions if like I need help. So I think that when I was choosing a field, I wanted to choose a field where I could be myself. And so I found that in pharmacy. But even when I was pursuing pharmacy, my parents were always asking me if I'm happy with the track that I'm with, because like I committed to this program, this 5-year program, to become a pharmacist when I was 16. So like I didn't know much, but they're always following up on me just to make sure like if this is something that I want to do, and I'm really thankful for that. In terms of growing up in the Bay Area as an Asian American woman, I would say that I lived in an area that was predominantly Asian, so I didn't feel left out. And I think that in the Bay Area here, the culture is pretty diverse. So I remember that even in elementary school, we would have multicultural day like every other month or so that students could share their culture with one another. And so I'm really thankful for that because that really helped with the exposure to the other things that I can learn around me.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I kind of just want to transition into what our panel is about today. Have you ever experienced racial sensitivity in your field?
So I fortunately have not experienced racial sensitivity, and I'm very thankful for that. But I've also lived a very sheltered life. UOP is pretty diverse. We have a lot of different groups here, and everyone is very willing to share their thoughts. And the Bay Area has been very nice to me as well, I would say. But regardless, I still think that it's important to voice and spread awareness about the inequalities that are going on, because the more people who stand up for it, the more people will hear about it and learn about it.
Thank you so much for the insight, Harriet. You're actually one of the first pharmacists we've had on our panel, so it's really nice to listen to that and have you on. So thank you for that. Moving on to Dr. Go. She is here with us today. And if you just want to start off by talking about sleep medicine, because that's not something that we see every day, and just a little background on that.
Yeah, of course. So I'm currently a sleep medicine fellow. I'm finishing up in finishing up in end of June, so a few more months. And then I signed for a job. I'll be out working in the SoCal area. But sleep medicine, I also had pretty late exposure to. It's not a field that is a required rotation in medical school or residency. I took it as an elective during residency. And it's a multidisciplinary field, meaning that many different specialties can go into it. Uh, I think about like 20 or 30 years ago, it used to be just neurology or pulmonary that were grandfathered in. But in the past 15 years, it became its own specialty, and it has allowed specialties such as family medicine, which, like me, pediatrics, ENT, anesthesia, basically, I think there's like a list of like 15 different specialties that can go into the subspecialty of sleep medicine. And like the name, it's basically a sleep specialist, focuses on sleep disorders. Bread and butter would be sleep disordered breathing, such as obstructive sleep apnea. However, we do get a lot of narcolepsy cases, delayed circadian rhythm disorders, insomnia, and yeah, so it's very diverse. And in the sense of becoming also a radiologist, we look at sleep studies, and that's a big part of our work as well. So we may be seeing patients 3 to 4 days, and then we would spend maybe half a day of reading sleep studies of what we ordered on our patients. So there is that aspect to it as well, rather than just seeing patients. So yeah, it's a very exciting field. I love it. It's also a growing field as well. I mean, we all sleep, and I think I could say for a big population of us, we probably have some sort of a sleep disorder in some sense. And 10 to 15% of the population has breathing problems while they sleep. So it's definitely a field that is in need right now, and I'm very excited to finish training and to start working.
Thank you for that. If you also just want to go into what a family physician is and what they do too.
Yeah, so my base specialty is family medicine. And, I decided I wanted to be a family medicine very early on as a kid. I had a wonderful family physician that I adored, that, I looked up to. And basically a family physician is the every person physician. I don't know how else to put it, but it's very comprehensive, the knowledge we need to know. And we're very much the cornerstone to a lot of medicine in terms of, we're the front line of what a lot of patients see first before we refer to the specialties. And it's comprehensive healthcare for, anywhere from babies, newborns, to the day you die. We also do OB, delivering babies is also a big part of our training in residency. We manage any disease from diabetes to high blood pressure, the basic ones, to, anything that requires maybe specialty thinking we would refer just because of the breadth of knowledge we need to know. But it is very much a very special type of training where you really make a connection with people. And that's what I loved about family medicine. You get to know families, generations of families. You deliver their babies, and then you see their babies growing up into kids, and you see their kids, and the kids grow up to become adults. It's extremely rewarding. The longevity of the relationships you make with these families are, what really makes family medicine special. So that's kind of in general what I think. I could go on and on about family medicine and what family physicians do, but
Very nice explanation. I think it was very well rounded. But moving on to how you chose and when you chose sleep medicine as your main focus.
So like I said, I did a 1-month rotation in residency. I had a friend who also went into sleep medicine, went with the background of family medicine, and it always intrigued me. I have always valued sleep, and even in high school, I've never pulled an all-nighter, just because. And I know many people have. I remember in high school, I was a huge, I studied a lot, but I don't think I've ever like worked past 10:30, ever in my life, just because I loved sleep that much. And honestly, I think it helped me a lot. I think that, I never did well cramming at like 12 in the morning, and then getting like 6 hours of sleep. I cannot perform well on an exam. I need the 8 hours, and it just impacts so much in your life. And I think in my family medicine rotation, I had so many patients complain of sleep problems and how it impacted their mood. It increases depression, anxiety, it impacts your blood pressure, it impacts your diabetes, your heart disease, your atrial fibrillation. It just goes on and on and on. And one thing that really tied together everything for me very nicely was sleep medicine. And, one thing I have to say with family medicine, a lot of times, you do make that special relationship with patients, but a lot of times this hard work goes unrecognized. And I think one thing I loved about sleep medicine was that if you fix someone's sleep disorder breathing, it's extremely rewarding in the sense that they instantly notice it, versus if you try to, treat someone's diabetes. But with sleep, it impacts so much of someone's day to day that when you treat their sleep disorder, it's instantaneous and they notice it right away. And that was very special to me in that sense. So I think that was a big reason as well. But I think that, a lot of you guys are in high school, from what I hear, and I just want to make you aware of it. That is a specialty you can go into, later on in life. And so I think, as awareness grows more and more, which I think it will become a very, hot type of specialty in the future.
Thank you for that. It's really cool to see specialties that we've never heard of before. And then kind of going into balance and how you manage your professional and personal life and your travels and where you want to travel next.
Yeah. So, I agree with a lot of the panelists with, balancing, your life and work and studying. It's important. If not, it's the most important thing. And I think early on, I realized that for me to feel happy in medicine, I needed other things in my life. And that for me was traveling, and, also other interests. But a big part of that was traveling. I think I am someone that, I get bored easily. I need to see new things. I need to be stimulated constantly, to be interested. And, medicine it's tough in the sense that in medical school, you are constantly studying. and it becomes very mundane, and the hours become days, become weeks, become years, and it goes by really fast. But to get through it, for me, I needed a break. I needed something to refresh myself. I needed things to also put the world in perspective for me, because when you are studying this much and you're working so hard, you do get tunnel vision, and you lose sight of the outside world. I remember in medical school, I would, a lot of us would, after an exam, we would go out and even go grocery shopping, and we'd be like, oh, this feels very interesting to be out in the real world. And, even going to a restaurant sometimes after like a really intense week of exams felt surreal. And, when you are in that environment, you need a break. You need something that can keep you going. And my road in medicine was very atypical with the 7-year med program, but I also worked really hard in high school, and did a lot of AP classes, and started out as a junior in college, which actually gave me a lot of freedom. And with like a full ride, they paid for my like study abroad. So I think I was only in college, I think, for a year and a half, like on campus, and the rest, like the next year, I think I was just studying abroad. And that is what I think triggered my, interest in traveling. And I think the other big component to this is also the financial part of, your to support your interests, and coming up with like kind of a side hustle, also keeping in mind that the world, you do need money to do some of the interests you may be interested in. So, and finding ways to support that as well. But yeah, that's like a whole nother topic, right? The financial part. Med school is expensive, schooling's expensive, but finding maybe a side hustle to do that doesn't take up too much time in med school. So, yeah. Next place I hope to travel to. So it's hard. I think international traveling is hard. I was just in Morocco a few weeks ago, and I actually felt safer in Morocco COVID-wise than I did in the States, which, was very interesting. But we're hoping to go for a beach vacation. So no definite plans yet, but I think I'm in need of some sun and ocean.
Sounds like a lot of fun. And then transitioning into today's panel, have you ever experienced racial sensitivity in your field?
Yeah, so I think I alluded to this earlier about, medical school was a hard time, but and for me, I think third year was the hardest time for me, just because I had very limited work experience going into medical school. The average age was going into medical school, I think, was 26 or 27 in our school, and I was 20. So I couldn't go to any of the social events at the bars. Like the first few months, all the medical students were trying to get to know each other and stuff. So that kind of gives you a bit of a perspective of like how I started medical school, just like this bushy-eyed, like, like limited experience, work experience person. And I think a lot of people viewed me as very young, but by the time third year came around, like I said, I had limited work experience, but I didn't realize that people saw me as Asian, if that made sense, just because I grew up in very diverse cultures and diverse places growing up. But I went to medical school in Michigan State, which, one of their main medical campuses is Grand Rapids, which at that time was not very diverse. And it was during my OB rotation. And I didn't know this at the end. I just got a poor mark from one of the residents. It came as a surprise to me. No one told me during this entire 8-week rotation I wasn't doing well. And I remember when I met with the the clerkship director of that rotation to kind of discuss what happened, he basically alluded to the fact that it was because of my upbringing as an Asian person that maybe didn't set me up very well for this. And I was in shock, honestly. And it took me many years to really comprehend maybe what he said, but obviously it was a big part of ignorance on his end for the resident as well. And, at this point in my career, looking back on what happened, you know, at that point, I'm like, is it my fault? Was it my fault? Did I do something wrong? And at this point, I'm like, no, I did not do anything wrong. It was their ignorance. It was their beliefs in maybe what an Asian person should have been. And maybe I wasn't it, you know? And I think that is a huge detriment to, you know, kind of falling in line to the stereotypes of how Asian people should be. I think that, you know, whenever someone doesn't fall in line with that, it, you know, then people don't know how to comprehend that. And, you know, it did impact, you know, going forward in terms of my applications to residency. But at the end of the day, like, it was their loss. And I'm very, you know, happy with where I am right now. And, but these are things that, you know, it's just to be mindful of when you go into medicine or any field for that matter, that these stereotypes do play a role.
Thank you so much. Okay, so as the panel comes to the end, we are actually going to have some open-ended Q&A. So if anybody has any questions for the panelists, you can either unmute or put it in the chat. And then also we have some questions from the Google form that we put out. So while we're waiting for questions to come in the chat or unmuted, I'll just read some off. So one question that was asked is actually, I think, specifically for AG, which is, what courses do you generally take during dental school?
Yeah, so for dental school, for the first year, we take general science classes. So in the fall, I took histology, biochemistry, and like dental materials. So these are classes that are general, but also they have like half of it be towards specifically teeth. So like in biochemistry, we learned about general biochemistry in like a month. And then like maybe 2 weeks, we learned about biochemistry specifically to like the oral microbiome and like biochemistry of teeth. And then same for histology, we looked at like slides of teeth. And then in the spring, we took, what did we take? I'm like blanking. It's like I feel like it goes so fast, but oh my God, I can't remember. So we took biochemistry, we took histology. Oh, we took anatomy. Oh my God, I almost forgot about it. So we took anatomy for a whole semester, and it's like 6 credits. And we learned about basically everything from like the hips up. And we concentrated a lot on like the head and neck because that's where we're mostly working on. And then we took restorative dentistry both semesters. And that's kind of like learning about the techniques and like the theories behind why we do certain things at the dental office, like why we'd want to use a specific material over another material, and more like clinical based. So that was first year. And now I'm transitioning into second year, and we're doing more dental related things now. Like we're learning about nervous system and pain, because as like a future dentist, we will have to deal with a lot of pain, like whether you're getting a cavity filled or like a tooth pulled out. And then we're doing immunology, so like infection, things like that, and craniofacial development, so like how our heads develop, how our teeth develop together. And that's kind of how we're doing it now. And then I know next year, like in the fall and the spring, we are going to be doing more things like periodontology, endo, ortho. We'll be doing all like the specialties, because that's like what we'll be doing when we're in clinic third and fourth year. So I guess to summarize, first year is basic science courses. That's like very rapid, because the assumption is you already learned it in undergrad. And then they're just kind of putting in more like specific things to dentistry, like teeth. And then second year, they prepare us for more of the dental specialties and skills that we would need to be a dentist when we're seeing patients the third year and the fourth year. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we also have another question, which is pretty similar, but it's actually for Harriet. So what courses did you take in college as a pharmacist?
So I would say that it's pretty similar. The first year, um, the first year I took general chemistry, just to make sure that we have the basics down for half a semester, and then the rest of the semester it was biochemistry. Then we also had like physiology and I believe it was called pharmaceutical calculations, because a lot of us were coming from the the 2 or the 5 year program. So that meant that we didn't have any experience of working in the pharmacy. So it was really important for us to be on the same page. Um, for the following semesters, though, we would start to kick into taking classes like the top 200 drugs, so that we would start our introductory pharmacy practice experience, which is where you go out into an actual community pharmacy and intern there. And during that semester, I believe I also took additional, I believe, physiology classes. And then towards the summer, that's when therapeutics start to kick in. So that's when you're taking like cardiology, neuropsychiatry. And then for the following semesters, you would start to take immunology. Yeah, a lot of therapeutics courses. I don't specifically remember it because like the timeline goes pretty quickly, but if you like want to message me, then I can give you the entire course load. But specifically this semester, I'm taking geriatrics. I'm also taking oncology, and pharmacy law as well, because you really need to know like what the Board of Pharmacy expects out of you. So similar to the dental program, it's the first year is just general basics, and then the second year would be therapeutics. And then finally on your third year of pharmacy school, that's when you're not in classes anymore. And that's when you're going out to rotation. So you go out to a general area, then you practice with 6 different rotations, including like acute care or hospital pharmacy, internal medicine, and then community pharmacy. And then you also get 2 electives. My 2 electives are going to be transitions of care and managed care. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't give a more specific answer, but if you message me afterwards, I'll give you the entire course.
No, that's totally fine. Thank you so much, Harriet. So our next question is for Dr. Guo, and her question is, sorry, her question is, do you deal with dreams and the effect they have on our brains, or just sleep patterns?
So we deal with a bit of everything. There's definitely a lot of, night terrors from nightmares, from originating from PTSD. And, that's definitely a whole section of diseases that we deal with, especially in the veterans population, where a lot of these young men had PTSD from war. But one interesting thing with dreams was the increase in dreaming during the COVID pandemic, especially early on. And we've been trying to, discuss why that was the case. A big part of the most obvious answer is probably that people were working through their dreams because of the stress during the day, of the unknowns. So during the day, they were trying to work through it, and then it kind of carried on through the night. But the other hypothesis was that people were just lacking sleep for the longest time. And when they finally went to sleep, given the chance to during the COVID pandemic, because of the work from home policies, they suddenly had more time to dream. But more time to dream also more disrupted sleep. So you're waking up more. And if you're waking up more, you have more chances to remember what happened in the dreams. And lastly, you dream during REM. So if you're suddenly getting more sleep, you have more REM. So more REM means more dreaming. So all these are, hypotheses. So yes, we do a lot of different aspects to sleep. Almost every aspect to sleep we do see. So it's not just obstructive sleep apnea that we deal with, though that is about 60 to 70%. A big part of it is also all these other sleep disorders.
Thank you so much for that. We also have some more questions in the chat. So one is for Cynthia, and the person is asking, as an international student, do you think that you've had any challenges because things work differently around the world?
To simply answer that, yes. So a lot of your scores and grades and things are different in different parts of the world. So having to get that, I guess, transferred and get the equivalent of it so I could apply was something that I had to do. Also within like the Commonwealth countries. So when I was applying from Australia to the UK, they had different grading system as well. So I had to get that transferred. So there were challenges in terms of when you're applying for things, getting them to recognize your different degrees or your different grades and understanding how the different schools work. And for example, in the UK, I graduated with a Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery, even though it was a graduate medical program. So it's equivalent to an MD, but it says bachelor's. So some people like, so is that a graduate program or is it an undergraduate program? So yeah, there were a lot of challenges just trying to get people to understand how the different ways of, how different things work in the different countries. But once you get, people to understand that, and then it's fine. You just needed to show them why it was this name or why the score was written this way and how that equivalent to the US standard. And apart from that, other challenges, I guess, just things are so different everywhere. Residency program in the UK is so different to residency programs in the US. So also having to adjust to that and to the different expectations. But yeah, just understanding how it's different and showing the people you're applying to what you need, that helps if you're applying as an international student.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. We have a couple more questions, but I'm going to bring it back to Harriet really quickly. If you want to talk about the list of classes that you found for pharmacy school.
Yeah, so the entire course, so basically for the first semester, there's going to be 6 semesters before you go into your clerkships. The first semester is going to be bioinformatics, where they teach you about biostatistics. And then you also have a mini introduction of law. Then you have dispensing and compounding calculations and pharmaceutical dosage forms. So that's where you learn about the difference between like ointments, creams, tablets, capsules. Then you have like general chemistry and physiology. Then with the next upcoming semester, you have an over-the-counter product class. And that's when you learn about like ibuprofen or like Miralax, stuff that's over the counter that you can prescribe to, or not prescribe, but like give to patients. And then you also have the Community 1 IPI, which is where you go out and work or intern at a CVS for a bit for 80 hours. And then you also have another biostatistics class. Then you have this class called drug disposition, which is basically pharmacokinetics. And with the semester after that, you start to kick in more therapeutics. So like endocrine, which is where you work, where you learn more about like the insulin that we have to give to patients. And you have cardiology and PK2. And then for the semester after that, that's when you have immunology and case-based practice, which is where you have cases and you sit in a group of like 15, and then you pretty much, I don't know if you've heard, but you perform a SOAP note, then you write it up so that you can present to the facilitator as like a practice case. And then there's also a nutrition class as well. Then the semester after that, there's an infectious disease course, a genitourinary course. There's a pulmonary course where you learn about asthma and COPD. And then there's also pharmacy practice management, where you learn about like how to manage a pharmacy and insurance issues, stuff like that. And like I said, for this semester, the very last semester before you go into your clerkships, there's going to be oncology, emergency medicine, there's going to be a class on pain and AAPI preparedness, so you become more prepared for your clerkships.
Thank you so much, Harriet, and for doing that extra research. We have another question in the chat, which is, if you were able, this is also for anybody and everybody. So if you were able to give any advice to your high school self, what would it be?
Hey, sorry, I need to get going, but just to quickly answer that question, you know, I think I was very focused in high school, but to not, I think to just view life as a very long process and to embrace this process and not just, you know, to always think of, you know, the next step and then after that, what that is. So I think, yeah, I think just to take it a step at a time, and this sounds very corny, but just to really enjoy each step of the way, and not always trying to plan out your life because it never works out the way you plan it. So yeah, but thank you for having me. I do have something I do need to go, so I apologize for the abrupt ending, but yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to DM me, and I'm always very happy to talk to, you know, aspiring medical professionals or people in the medical professional. It's something I'm extremely passionate about. And if you want to talk about, you know, these topics we talked about, the Asian community, the AAPI community, I'm very happy to discuss as well. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming, and I really enjoyed working with you.
Yeah.
Bye, thank you for coming.
Bye.
It was really nice having you.
Have a good Saturday. Have a good weekend, guys. Enjoy
it.
Bye.
So we're actually going to continue on to wrapping it up if Maida wants to take over now.
Well, guys, we really appreciate having all of you guys on the panel, and we appreciate everyone who attended today for coming. If anyone wants to reference back to it, or if any of our panelists want to put it on their platforms, this will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel, which is Medical Wonders. Definitely check out our Instagram and everything that is going on right now. Yeah, if any of the panelists have any closing remarks.
I also just wanted to echo on what Lulu said about just really enjoying yourself in high school. I think that's so important. I know when you're in high school, you just want to look forward to the next thing and you want to look forward to college and uni. But when I look back on high school, they were really, really fun days. And I had a lot of fun in high school, you know, some of my closest friends now are still my high school friends. So enjoy it because, like she said, nothing goes to plan. But things will work out as they are meant to, and things will work out as they should. So enjoy it. And then if medicine or pharmacy or dentistry is what you want to go down, we're here to answer any questions at any time.
Thank you for that. If anyone else has any ending remarks.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to Dr. Lulu and Cynthia's points. Definitely enjoy like the journey, not the end goal, because you're gonna have so many goals like throughout life. Just like enjoy the process and you'll have a lot of fun. And always, if you are interested in, I guess like dentistry, reach out to me. I'm always happy to help. So yeah.
Thank you guys. All of their information, social media information is on our Instagram and the posts about the panel. It's on our stories right now. So thank you so much for everyone for coming. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, I think all the questions are done. But we really appreciate it. We really appreciate everyone for taking the time out of the day, because I do know it's a Saturday and this isn't what everyone's ideal Saturday is, but we appreciate it. And it was really nice having this panel and just talking about things that needed to be talked about.
Also, if the panelists could stay just a minute over so we can take a quick picture for the Instagram.
Well, all the participants are welcome to leave. Make sure you're filling out that form, the attendance Google Forms to get your volunteer hours. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for coming. Okay, I think everyone's gone.
Thank you so much to all the panelists again. We really enjoyed working with all of you.
Thanks for having us. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really cool to hear about everyone's different stories.
You want to take a picture? If everyone wants to smile.
Oh, Maida, are you taking it?
Can someone else take it? I can't because I'm screen sharing.
I don't know how to take it.
See ya.
Wait, can you stop screen sharing so then we can have like the full view? Okay. I'll take it. Okay, thank you all for being here. I really liked hearing all your stories, and it really means a lot that you came out here on a Saturday.
All of the panelists, yeah. Oh, sorry, no problem. All the panelists are welcome to leave whenever ready, and then I will also message you guys after.
Bye.